That's it. Why the hell did that do that? That doesn't normally do that. Oh, that doesn't normally do that. It's played up on me. The bugger. The bugger's played up. Right, we're back. We're back. And you know what? We had two different things that went wrong then, right? So I was looking on, and it does this to me sometimes. I was looking on my YouTube live stream, thing where you have your chat on your live stream in your live studio or whatever, and there's no chat coming through. There's literally no chat. Anyway, then I go over to my other one. I go over to my other screen, and then everyone's there in the chat chatting away, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on? What's going on? You know? So there we go. I can see everyone's chat. I'm sorry, guys, you're all in the chat there, and I didn't even notice. We've got Chris in there, we've got PvP, we've got Peter, we've got Susie, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, I'm back. I'm here. We sorted it. Jesus, how long was that? Was that 7 minutes of me not? God damn it! That was 6 minutes of me not actually realising. Oh my god, that's an entire 6 minutes of no audio. I'm gonna have to put a warning on the video now, on the video title. Let's change the video title, because we can't have this. Oh my god, is it all right now? Can everyone hear me? I've not even asked that about. Okay, we're back. Right, okay, cool, right. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Right, yeah. Let me just put a warning on the video for when it goes to recorded, pre-recorded. Audio at I'll just put 6 minutes. I don't know exactly whether it's 6 minutes, but it's close enough. Right then, there we go. So, yeah, my god. So, right, I'm not going to repeat everything I bloody said. I will only repeat 1 or 2 bits, and then I will also see what's in the chat as well, because I've had loads of chat and I've not even seen what's in there, so I apologise about that. So, there's only a couple of things that were, well, really one thing that was more important in that ramble, which was YouTube memberships. I have recorded the video, the announcement video for YouTube memberships today, and because I know I've not spoke about it for a couple of weeks because I've still been getting stuff sorted and everything with it. So I'm editing that video possibly tomorrow, although I did also say in that ramble that I am going off to meet a friend tomorrow from university, but also going round a town with them, round the charity shop, so it serves a dual purpose. So I won't be back till later on, but most likely I will be editing that tomorrow. So that means the YouTube memberships could be coming very, very soon indeed, even within the next week. So yeah, that was one of the things I was saying. And the other thing I was saying, before I was getting set up and everything as well, but the other thing I was saying was just the fact that I was going to go around the charity shops and all the rest of it. And I was talking about just a few bits and bobs that happened in the week, but we won't go back into that. So I will look in the chat now. So we've got PvP, we've got Chris, we've got Peter, and we've got Susie. Now I've not gone down the chat, so if anyone else has joined, I will catch you in a second. I wonder how long he'll go without no sound. Oh my god, here we go. The silent movie edition. Okay, that's good. Ads goes silent is not the way to grow the audience. I know, right? Bloody hell, it's mental. 3 hours later, he will see no... Can you imagine that if I just didn't look in the chat and then I was just rambling without looking in the chat for 3 hours, like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? Oh my god, that would be so bad. Right, so... Adz has a bad habit of not checking chat. I do. I have this proves my bad habit of not checking the chat, because it was 7 minutes, 6 or 7 minutes without sound, without realizing it, blissful in ignorance, just spouting off loads of different things, and yet here we are. So yeah, that it really does just prove my habits for checking the chat are just intolerable. They are terrible. So, right then, he usually says hi by now, but I do. You know why I didn't say hi? Because it was that bloody thing on the live stream. The chat wasn't working properly, so I couldn't see anyone's chat. That was the problem. It was a double whammy. It was a double whammy because I couldn't see the chat. I just assumed that no one had turned up yet. And then, there was no sound as well, so it was a bloody double whammy, that one. It hit me hard, that one. Bloody YouTube and bloody OBS both messing up. Oh god, that was funny. Right then, let me go down a little bit. Oh, we're back. Oh yeah, cool, we're back. Okay, Adz, we expect all to receive a printed transcript of the first, but well, god, no, that's not gonna happen anyway. So anyway, what's people been doing? Whack in the chat what you've been up to this week. What's been going on for you? I had also said that, by the way, in the previous part when I didn't have any sound. So yeah, no one realised that. So yeah, whack in the chat what you've been doing this week, what you've been getting up to, all the rest of it. And yeah, I don't know what else there was that I said. The only thing really that I was saying was I was referencing also the title and the fact that I've been listing on eBay this week, and I've been trying to get some of that stuff done. I did like 17 listings, I think, this morning, so that wasn't too bad. I generally have this habit now of doing listings in the morning. I don't know whether other people do that, whether other people kind of have do listings like early on, or whether they do listings sort of midday or even like in the evening. I've been through varying periods with it, so sometimes I've done listing in the evening, and I've done it literally at like 7, 8, 9 o'clock. I've done it for ages. What I would do is I'd do it at 9 o'clock watching a movie or watching TV of some description, and I'd just list like 10, 20 items. And that obviously, when I was doing it full time, I'd do it like practically every night, or 5 nights at least, like just doing that. And that was really, really good. But then I've changed, and now I really like getting it done in the morning. So I'll wake up, and when I wake up, I'll just, if I've got listings to do, like if I've got photos on my phone, I will literally list them there and then, so it's quite good. And it feels fresh, because you think, well, you know, I've only just got up, and yet I've done one of the good jobs for the day, you know. So being able to do that listing there and then, and feel that kind of hit of, nice, I've got something done, is brilliant as a start to the day. So I really like that. Whenever I'm doing, in the morning, whenever I first get up and I'm doing, let's say I do some reading or something like that, I don't get that same hit of, yeah, I've done like a really good job for the day, because I consider like my reading more as a common thing, you know, or a common theme throughout my days. So when I attribute like the first thing, and this is quite interesting from a motivation standpoint, what should you do first in the day? What is like kind of your first hit, shall we say? And, you know, as I say, with reading, because I've kind of attribute it, or have this kind of perception of it as being something that I should do, and that it is a common theme throughout my days, it's like if I do that first off, I don't get that same hit of like, oh, I've achieved something, because it's quite a common thing. But if I do something like listing, because obviously at the moment it isn't that much of a common thing, it's maybe a couple of times a week or something like that, I think I still get that hit of, well, I've done something. And also with listing, it's not like with reading. With listing, you get more instant gratification. For example, you get your little screen afterwards that reinforces you to list another item, because it says, oh, success, your item has been listed for sale, and that gives you something. But also, not only that, you've got the fact that sometimes when you're listing, you'll make a sale, and so then that motivates you. And also what you can do to motivate yourself further is have a little kind of pad and pen next to you, or do it on your phone notes, which is what I do, of listing the value of the items that you're listing. And then what that does for you is that, say, let's say you've listed 5 and you've got a value of like £100 or £150 or whatever it is, whatever value it is, that then motivates you and think, oh, let's see how much value I can get this list to. And so then you keep going through, and then you get kind of a minor positive reinforcement on each listing you do, and you think, oh, that's adding to my total. So there's a sort of gratification in that, rather than with the reading. And then let's say opposed to that, you do something else, like you're doing something else on your computer. Whenever I'm doing something that's maybe a more meaty task, and I really do think it's kind of these more meaty tasks, if you do something that's a more meaty task, it seems to cement you in the day more. You seem to be, well, I've achieved something there. It's something big. It's not something that's a minor reward. It's something that's more of a major reward. And I don't know neuropsychologically whether there's an increased hit in dopamine or something like that. Whether if you're doing it on from a larger, or what you perceive as a larger kind of task that you've accomplished compared with a smaller one, you could maybe say that there might be. I don't know. I've not looked at the research or anything, so I wouldn't like to say for certain. But that's possible that might be the case, and therefore it gets you going in that way, and that's potentially why you feel that, or a release of certain positive chemicals or hormones or whatever. So, it's good. I feel good when I've done that kind of meaty task. So that's what I try and do in the mornings. But it's hard. You don't always do it. There's times where, well, you get up and you think, well, I'll just slowly get into it. And I would say about 50 or 60% of my days are more like, well, I'll slowly get into it. So I'll log on to my computer. I maybe do a bit of reading, log on to my computer, do tick the little things off, and then get into it like that. And that works quite well. That's actually quite good. But what I've found is if you're doing it on the little things, ticking your little things off your to-do list, you have to do multiple of them so that then you get that hit, because you then get that hit thinking, well, yes, I've only done little things, and yes, it may be 7:30 or 8 o'clock or whatever, but I've done quite a few of them. And when I say 7:30 or 8 o'clock, for me, 8 o'clock is late. Because when I'm getting to 8 o'clock, I think to myself, I'm going to go off for my walk now, and then I'm going to get breakfast, and then, I watch something on YouTube, whether it be educational or whether it just be something fun, and then I'll do another couple of bits of admin jobs on the computer, and by that time it's 9 o'clock. And so then I think, well, the morning's getting on now. So I always think that period between 6 and 8 is like, if you can get good things going in that period between those 2 hours of 6 and 8, you are flying for the day. Like, you are flying because you've got a real jump on the day. Whereas, and I've said this so many times before when I've been getting up at 6, because I go through periods. Like, I'm in more of a sustained period at the minute of getting up at sort of 5:30, 6. I've been in this period for maybe 3 to 4 months now, so that's good. And I think the longest time I ever went in, like, getting up at 6 a.m. was maybe for about 5 to 6 months. So I'm fast approaching kind of overtaking that kind of stage of when I kind of broke my last spell of getting up at 6 again. And then what I did was I start getting up at 8. But I think it is sometimes good, like in the winter months where it's darker outside, all the rest of it. Maybe your body craves a bit more sleep or something like that. It can be quite productive actually to give your body that in a bit of time in the winter. Get up a little bit later, and I mean, you could always do it the opposite way. So you work a little bit later, get up a little bit later. That sort of thing. Whereas what I do is I go to bed slightly earlier, not crazily earlier, but slightly earlier, then get up earlier. And that, I've found that really does work well over the summer. Really, really well. But as I say, like, giving yourself a little bit of that time over winter might be a positive thing. But what I might do this year is I might trial getting up, if I can do it, which I think I can, trial getting up at 6 throughout the winter. Because it might very well be a psychological thing, and it 90%, 95% it is a psychological thing. But really, it's not really anything to do with your body. It's a matter of mind over matter, and all. It's a matter of mind over matter. It's mind over matter, and just getting up then, rather than thinking there's this kind of. I mean, you could argue that there's some sort of natural, lesser cycle of almost pseudo-hibernation that humans go through in the winter, where we need a bit more sleep and we need a bit, etc. But it doesn't disregard the fact that you could easily get over that with any small amount of willpower, really. So although I've kind of gone through periods in the past where I've been conscious of maybe having a bit more sleep over winter and just chilling a bit more over winter because it's a colder time, etc. What I might do is flip that on its head and do something different and trial something different. But yeah, anyway, right then. Usually check YouTube and Facebook to see what's new. Yeah, I do that. I try and be careful with that. So when I get up, I will, no word of a lie, I will check Instagram and I will check Snapchat and I will check my Facebook Messenger. I don't have Facebook on my phone as an app, but I have my Facebook Messenger. I only check Facebook once in a blue moon on my computer. And I'll check them, but I will be very, very careful. So I'll try, when I see myself getting into that scrolling habit, and then, maybe 5 minutes has gone by or 10 minutes has gone by, starting getting to that scrolling habit, and I think, nope, up now. And I'm quite good these days at being disciplined of getting out of that pretty quickly, because I know that I'm kind of just investing my emotions in the scrolling and the kind of looking at these different posts and stuff, and that's not helpful for productivity. So then I think, well, actually I've realised that, move on. But I allow myself the luxury of easing into it, so I'll get up and I will do that. The only time I don't do that, and I do it the opposite way around, is, to be honest, most mornings when I have a dream, because I have a dream practically every night anyway, so it is practically every day that I get up, record my dream, then I'll go on social media, because I have to record my dream before I go on social media, because otherwise I'll forget it. So I have to record it immediately, as soon as I get up. And that normally takes me to record one fairly complex, fairly intricate dream with plenty of scenes in there and dream figures and well, not conversations, but partial conversations that I can remember, because I can't remember. Problem is, like, you wake up from a dream and you've got all this information to hand, and you've got all these conversations that happened in the dream, and you can't remember all the conversations. You can only remember, like, this reply, this counter reply, this reply, maybe a little bit down here, and that's all you can remember. You're very, very lucky to remember a bloody full dream conversation. I mean, I don't think I've ever done it where you've got, let's say, in your memory, you've remembered like an entire conversation that's like, 10 replies long. I don't think I've ever done that. I've only ever managed to get, like, maybe as a maximum 4 or 5 replies in like one sentence. So one guy will say a sentence, I'll say a sentence, and I can remember that. And obviously that's taken a lot of training to build up. Like, a normal person who hasn't been involved with dream interpretation could never at all get to that level of memory recall of a dream. I've been doing it for 2 years, every single day, going into my dreams, even doing active imagination, visions, etc. Every single day recording in my dream diary something or other. Practically every single day in my dream diary recording something or other. At the same time, of course, reading very, very intensely on dreams, on the process of active imagination, the process of vision work, on the mystical things and spiritual things and all the rest of it relating to dreams, psychological phenomena, how to get the most out of dreams in that circumstance, how to get the most out of your mind, and how to be less unconscious of yourself and all that. So a normal person could never do that. They'd have to have the same level as me, which is to do the 2 years that I've done, so that then they could get to that level. You see, it's just like a socialized thing in a sense. I mean, it's not directly socialized, because there's, of course, innate traits within my own brain that makes me more predisposed to being able to do that in a more obvious and easy manner. Someone who was had high trait conscientiousness, lower trait openness, might, maybe higher extroversion, lower introversion, all these different things kind of combined, maybe didn't necessarily have a natural upbringing towards any fantasy or mythology or anything like that that kind of relates to dreaming, any kind of artistry or anything like that, all that sort of stuff, any creativity and stuff like that, and they're more kind of let's say, a more analytical person and less kind of internal, then internal in the way of fantasy and creativity and stuff like that, then those people, it might take them even longer. It might take them really years and years and years to be able to get to that point, because they've not got that natural inset innate traits that then can be socialized more, and then obviously be socialized more easily as well to get you to that point. But no, so I do that, and then I'll do the Instagram and the Facebook Messenger and stuff. But anyway, I've just rambled loads, so I'm gonna look in the chat. I always ramble loads, but you know what I'm like. First thing I do. So I'm backing up my emails on it while watching this. Wouldn't want to lose them all. Oh, cool, nice. First thing I do is look at my ending now and sell similar with a few adjustments. That's what I used to do. Is I used to look at things like that, and I used to do my promoted listings in the morning. I used to do unsold, relists or whatever, all those kind of things, because they were like the basic things that I like to do in the morning. They were nice, and so I really enjoyed doing that as well. Right then, let me just see where we're at. Winter equals hibernation. Yeah, very true indeed. Down the online rabbit hole. Even rude dreams Adz. Yeah, oh god, yeah, I've got in my dream diary. God, my dream diary doesn't hold out, Jesus, yeah. I've had some funny dreams with sex and stuff. With loads of different, like with celebrities and with a lot. Obviously, I mean, most of my friends, not all of my friends, but most of my friends, I've done that with in my dreams. Yeah, you get that. You get that, of course, especially when you're younger as well, where your mind and your body is generally more kind of on sex and stuff. I mean, with men, with kind of the levels of testosterone and other things as well, maybe it doesn't go away so much, but yeah, certainly when you are young, you've got that kind of physical mentality a lot more, and so yeah, you of course, dreams are fantasies as well. There is a part of dreams that you can quite comfortably categorize as fantasy, and so and what Freud called wish fulfillment. Now, Jung would be a bit more. I've not really read much on Jung that kind of says what his thoughts were on dreams being wish fulfillment per se, but from what I've kind of read, generally, I don't really think he believed that so much, But I would say there is a good argument to apply the wish fulfillment idea that Freud had to dreams in a maybe even in a limited capacity. You could say that, well, it does come into it to a certain degree. And indeed, in my book, Revelations of the Self, I do kind of talk about how dreams can be and can have a wish fulfillment component to them. I mean, it is very obvious, and I think maybe Freud attributed too much of the wish fulfillment to dreams, and that was maybe a bit of a problem of his, and Jung kind of made a more kind of better approach to it and a more holistic approach to it. But nonetheless, I think Freud was right in saying that there is a component of wish fulfillment to it, and no doubt, let's say someone who's attractive, and then you go to sleep and you have a dream about them in a sexual capacity. Of course, there's some level of wish fulfillment in that, or some level of fantasy in that, we could say. So yeah, so definitely. I don't often remember dreams. Yeah, most people don't, because what happens is, generally, so Freud had this thing called the censor, and the censor is basically something that means that it'll kind of block things in the dreams from coming up. So it's actually a null and void concept, really. A lot of people who know a lot about dreams really don't really agree with the idea of the censor. But Freud would have this thing that, let's say you had some sort of complex around a phallus, right? The penis, or the sexual problem, whatever. Then your dream would represent the phallus symbolically in something else in the dream. obviously maybe a cigar or maybe this or maybe that or whatever. And that would be what Freud would say is the censor. The censor is suppressing the complex and putting it in symbolic form rather than actually blatantly. Because he kind of had this idea that there's kind of this hidden meaning to the dream. Whereas Jung was totally way, way different than that. Now, let's say let's go one further, right? And let's say that when you wake up, right, and then you can't remember a dream. Now, this was a mistake of mine when I was first learning about the censor. I thought the censor, what Freud was talking about the censor, was the thing within the unconscious that suppresses your memory of the dream once you wake up. So I thought it was more of a deeper, holistic thing, right? Whereas that's not what Freud meant by the censor at all. That was my own mistake for thinking that. So imagine, so that, I mean, you could make a very, very unstructured, bad argument for that being the case, but there is something there that suppresses the dream from consciousness, that takes it away from you as soon as you wake up. Whereas other dreams come up quite easily and you remember them quite easily. And you could say, well, there's something there. In Jungian psychology, you would say, well, that's the self or something like that. In Freudian psychology, well, there's not, I suppose there wouldn't really be much of a conception for that, I suppose. Generally, if we're not talking in Jungian terms or Freudian terms, we could say, well, that's just a failing of the memory. Well, you can't remember it, of course, da-da-da-da. And that's probably the best suited thing for it, to label it as, more of a failing of the memory. But, so Jung was more kind of like, the dream was literally would show you everything. And of course, that's more accurate, because when you have a sex dream, how is Freud going to categorize that? And then, of course, Jung says, this is a quote from Jung of Freud, Jung says of Freud, that Freud says, the censor didn't work in that circumstance. But you see, if there's a mechanism in the unconscious that is there and present and working, then it should always work. It shouldn't just fail randomly all the time. Every beat of your heart, it doesn't just fail. Your heart keeps beating. Of course, it eventually fails upon death, but for the most part, your heart is functioning in a quite a stable manner. So just the censor should work in that way, in quite a stable manner. It shouldn't just fail or whatever. So so what happens is that people who don't interpret dreams, this is the best way I can conceptualize it. People who don't interpret dreams, their memory fails, and then they can't access it that easily. But you can train your memory as a muscle, like you train your muscles here and all the rest of it. And so then it gets easier to remember the dreams, easier. Now, okay, let's go back to this argument that I very briefly talked about the self in Jungian psychology, and about how the self could suppress dreams. Why would it be, and this is stepping into new territory in Jungian psychology, I've not heard Jung talk about this at all, or any Jungian that I've read so far, or listened to on interviews. Why would the self make the memory fail? Let's say that is a potential. I'm not saying it's true. I don't really believe it's true fully myself, but it's interesting to explore it as an option. But why would the self, which is the totality of one's personality, both unconscious and conscious, and that has control over the entire personality, and therefore of the mechanisms of the brain, and etc., why would the self shut down your memory at that moment and not allow you access to it and make your memory fail upon waking up from you accessing that dream, whereas on other times your dream can easily come up? Why would it do that? That can only really be one fundamental reason why it could do that. And that reason is that you're not ready for that dream content. So, but then we get into a weird kind of thing that, hang on a minute, doesn't that contradict the dream itself? Because the dream, in producing itself, the self produced the dream. Now, the reason the self produced the dream must be because it wants you to know something. And so therefore, why would it then contradict itself by closing down your memory upon waking up? And then, of course, meaning you can't remember it. There's only one fundamental reason that we can go down, a fundamental reasoning that we can go down to say that that could be the case. That entire argument has likely collapsed on itself, and then that likely means now that the idea that the self suppresses your dreams upon waking up with that kind of failing of the memory there is false. That fundamentally is likely false as an argument. But there is one circumstance where it could still hold up, and that's in the process of unconscious individuation. That the dream needed to be produced so that then it integrates certain things unconsciously the next day in the person and from the dream itself, of course, at the night time. But the self doesn't want the person to remember it because they don't need the person to remember it. The person is therefore more of a in that kind of very, very long, drawn out unconscious process of individuation. It's more like that person is a robot in a sense. Now, not fully a robot, because of course we all have emotions, we all have feelings, we all have this. I don't mean it in that sense, but I mean in the fact of, let's say, the self in terms of the wider self that's connected causally to the entire universe and the macrocosmic self, shall we say, the self which is the universe. We could say that working within the individual being a small tiny cell of the entirety of the universe, then that particular self working through that small self in that individual wants that individual to be unconsciously individuated, and therefore they close down the dreams. But you see, it just doesn't add up, does it? It's too wishy-washy. It's too wishful thinking. It's too, well, hang on a minute, Adam, that's just a bit too, there's too much metaphysical flavour in that. There's too much kind of idealism in that argument, It's not really grounded in facts. It's not really grounded fully in what we can perceive. What we can perceive, more likely and more grounded in reality, is a failing of the memory. And so it may just be that. It may be as simple as a failing of the memory. Now, yes, we can say that generally, because the organism as a whole has a centre which in Jungian psychology would be called the self, then the self must be responsible for everything that happens in that organism. And so then we get back to the argument by logical conclusion. But where do we go from there? Because we've failed on this argument. This argument has failed. So we would have to draw up then an entirely new argument to understand why that would be the case. But it has puzzled me. That's one of the things in dreaming that has puzzled me for a long time. Why is it that the brain does that? Why does it do that? And, well, then now let's just explore this idea of ignorance. Let's explore that for a minute, because I think this is the only way we're going to explain it. I think this is the only way that we've kind of touched upon that actually explains it more properly. Ignorance by an individual, let's say you wake up and then you get this dream and it's kind of like a little bit hazy and all the rest of it, and you ignore it and then you go about your day. And then what happens, of course, over weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months, your dreams, you can't remember them even more and more and more until you don't even remember that you've had a dream at all. You're totally disconnected from that experience. Whereas if, let's say, you aren't ignorant and you think even like to the smallest degree about that dream a minute after you've woke up, and you just think about little dream figures and keep them there for a bit, over weeks and weeks and months and months and months, you get able to build up, as I say, this muscle that allows you to remember them more easily. And therefore, it's not that it's kind of like this failing of memory in a negative stance. It's actually just ignorance by the person. But you see, there's still something fundamentally wrong here, because I'm not ignorant of my dreams. I don't think many people would say I'm ignorant of my dreams as well, but I certainly, within myself, don't feel ignorant of my dreams. And yet I still get it. Yet I still, on occasion, when I wake up, won't be able to remember that dream. But I know I've had one, and I know there's been something there. And that lends itself to something else, that it isn't just ignorance, because I know I'm not, and I know that there's other people who aren't as well, yet that this will happen towards. So then we just get back to the fact that it must just be something physiological. It must just be some sort of failing of memory in that moment, and the dream just doesn't come up fully. Or we could say it's a pairing of the slight failing of memory with the inability for that individual to find a hook in the external world that they can use as a cue-dependent recall to recall the contents of that dream within either a few minutes after the dream or a few seconds after the dream, or even throughout the day as well. Because what you'll find is that, you talk to someone, or you're looking at something in the environment. You look at a tree, for example. You go outside for a morning walk. You look at a tree. Boom, dream comes back. Oh God, I remember all that part of that dream now. So it could be like a failing of memory, but with the lack of cue-dependent recall in the environment to stimulate that back up, produce it back up into your consciousness, and therefore that, that's what it is, and that's just how it is. And that's just how the human organism works in producing the dreams and being able to remember the dreams and recall the dreams from a physiological standpoint. And we could say, yeah, actually that's quite a good argument, and actually that's okay. But the first argument falls down because it's a bit wishy-washy, it's a bit wishful thinking. We also have to draw upon ideas of the macrocosm, which actually aren't fully founded, because we could say, well, actually the universe isn't a macrocosm. It isn't a self with a personality or a being or a godlike creator, but actually the universe is just a system. And so if the universe is a system, then it's not really a macrocosm per se. It's just a system. We could argue from there. We could say, well, yeah, okay, it might be a system, but if the system is based on a supra version of our own brain, which is like a super brain, let's say, then the system should have abstract thought and intelligence, maybe not conscious of itself, but certainly abstract thought within itself, shall we say, even if it's not conscious of itself per se in the way that we're conscious of ourselves. Then that means that particular organizing factor within that is the system of the universe and beyond, and maybe even the system of the multiverse, that works in the same principle of the neurons in the brain, or as a functional brain in itself, with the neurons firing and all the rest of it, and this kind of if you've ever seen a picture of the universe, it kind of looks like almost like a web of some sort, and it looks also similar kind of to connections in the brain and things like that. But we could say that particular system would still have the ability to obviously produce certain things within the microcosm or the individual that would work, let's say, in more of a subjective manner. You see what I mean? but it's hard. I mean, god damn it, come on. That's very I mean, it's a... Yes, maybe, but, it's just a philosophical opinion, it's not... You can't say for certain. You can't pin it down fully. You can't pin it down fully. I talk a lot about these kind of systems in my book. I talk a lot about the self in my book, and I kind of do have this general youthful romanticism with regards to my personal ideas of the self, which I always have to temper with the fact that, well, hang on, I'm the one more romanticizing it here. It's not a self as we consider ourselves as subjective beings, but it's actually a supra system. But it's a system that works as a within the laws of science, within physics, within chemistry, etc. All these things. But anyway, I've gone very deep on that one little thing, haven't I? That's crazy. I don't know. God, I went really deep on that one. I just heard Andy Fordham, the darts player, has died. I've never heard of Andy Fordham, although I'm not really into darts, so I wouldn't necessarily know. How old was he? I'm gonna type it in anyway. 59. I was gonna say, I know Andy Fordham. Of course, yeah. I swear he wasn't on Bullseye, was he? Was he on Bullseye or not? No, I don't know. I don't think he... Oh, no, maybe he was. Yeah, maybe he was on Bullseye. Yeah, he's a fairly big guy, though, wasn't he? Yeah, he's a fairly big guy. Although he's in that hospital bed there, he doesn't look that big. Maybe he lost some weight towards the end of his life. But yeah, he's been a fairly big guy. Bloody hell. No, I do know him. Anyway, I do know him. The only ones I might remember are ones that wake me and are more like nightmares. Yes, because I could describe that in a more easy way, at least from a Jungian viewpoint. I can't really describe it particularly in other ways, and I think the Jungian viewpoint does it quite justice. So that would be a dream where you need to wake up. You need to wake up because there's something within it that something archetypal. There's an archetypal motif in it. That's to say, there's an instinctive motif in it, shall we say, that needs your attention consciously, and you need to integrate something in your personality from that dream. That would very much be, a prominent thing in which this needs to be experienced in consciousness. And, we do get into a bit of argumentation here, or arguments here, because you could say, well, is just the fact that you've woke up and it's been in consciousness enough to, let's say, integrate that individual in unconscious individuation, or go towards the very, very lengthy month on month, year on year process of unconscious individuation? Yes, it most likely is. Or is it actually more required and better to interpret that dream fully, because actually it might not get you just from that dream appearing in consciousness and waking you up and you seeing it for a moment, let's say, or for a few minutes afterwards, ruminating on it. Is it actually that just what was I going to say? That if, let's say, you don't interpret it, then that won't be enough to get you to kind of a level of integration. It's a hard one, whether, just the fact that you have been woken up by it and it's been presented in front of you, whether that's, let's say, enough, or whether you do have to go ahead and interpret it. Obviously, you would say from a logical viewpoint, well, in any circumstance, it's better to interpret a dream than not interpret it, so you may as well go ahead and interpret it. But of course, some people don't interpret it, and some people can't interpret it. The thing I found, at first, when I was interpreting dreams, I was like, oh my god, why doesn't everyone interpret dreams? This would just solve so many of the world's problems. But then I thought, yes, it would solve a lot of the world's problems. Everyone would take control of their own negative things within them, their own complexes, etc. But then I realised to myself, yes, but people won't do that. It's not practical. And if you're going to be a philosopher or a psychologist, you can't be getting people to do things that they're not going to do anyway. That's pointless. That's absolutely stupid. That's moronic. So what you need to do is think of ways of how you can help with things that people are already doing or things that people will actually implement, you know? Yeah, not everyone will interpret the dreams in that case. Now, I do have a little kind of experimental theory, shall we say, on this kind of idea of those types of dreams. I think, and it's been a while since I wrote this theory down, so, and it is a theory, it's not a hypothesis, because there are things that I'm going to recall in this theory that we know as cemented, and it's, in fact, it's not even that much of a far-fetched theory to a degree, but there's more to it than I'm going to talk about, because as I say, it's been a long time since I wrote it down, so I can't remember everything about it. It's in my book anyway, Revelation stuff. The reason I write everything down in my books is because I can't retain them in my brain. My brain has all these ideas, and it's crazy, it's mental. And, like, I'm working on an idea at the minute, bloody mental idea, but and I should be shot for some of these ideas, because these are too mental. Right, so imagine that you've got electrons, and I was watching something on Joe Rogan podcast the other day, and the way this physicist was explaining it was that basically electrons spin either way, right? Like this way, that way, etc. And you can basically cut these electrons so they go off in two different directions. And this is what's actually happening in life, right? And so this physicist was explaining the multiverse and explaining how, like, these decisions can split off and then create another universe. Well, not kind of create, but kind of another universe is present based on that decision. It's almost like non-dual. It's like non-dualism, because he was explaining how the electrons can basically split and go off two different ways, and they can only split in certain ways, like they'll go off like left or right or up and down and stuff. Obviously that's non-dual, you know, obviously. And we also get some quite interesting ideas of the self there, you know, up and down. But anyway, I don't think it's quite as simple as that, so I'm not going to be reductionistic and say, oh yes, look at that, it's the four functions, look at that, oh great, how cool. No, it isn't that, because I'm sure electrons can go off in all manner of different directions and all the rest of it. But the fact is that these electrons do this, and then these universes get created. And so I was thinking about how that must be applied to every single thing in the world to the most finite degree that we can't even comprehend. And I was starting to try and align this with different theories that I've had in my in my pursuits of Jungian psychology. So, you know, there's the idea in Jungian psychology of the unas mundas, the one world, etc. And I've been trying to understand how different thoughts that arise in different people's brains can go back into the unconscious. If, let's say, that thought doesn't get produced in the external world, goes back into the unconscious, and by way of the unas mundas goes into another person and rises up into that other person, and then gets expression in the external world. Because of course that thought has to get expression somehow as a physical action. That thought must get expression somehow in physical action. Now, I don't know how I got to that, but I got to that somehow in the book, and I had a kind of good structured argument around how that thought would have to be a physical action, or would have to come into a physical action, something like that. Anyway, but then I started to think, well, hang on a minute. if this multiverse thing is correct, then what if every imagistic fantasy I have creates, let's say, an alternate version of myself when I'm walking? So I'm walking down the street, right, and I see myself as a basketball player, right, the other day, and I'm like, hang on a minute. So what this could actually do is this imagistic fantasy of me being a basketball player, if that doesn't get expression, if that stays in my fantasy, doesn't get expression into the external world, then that means that the electron would have had to split off, and that imagistic fantasy that didn't get expression in this universe must have to create another universe where it got expression in. And so then that particular version of myself was created in a particular multiverse, but kind of non-dual. It's non-dual. It's kind of from and at the same time not from that imagistic fantasy that I had, because that imagistic fantasy arises at the exact same time as that specific image in the other multiverse that then coincides with each other, because temporality isn't just a linear thing. Time is relative, and so it doesn't matter within the system of the entirety of the multiverse, which is potentially infinite. Temporality doesn't exist. Temporality isn't there. Everything happens at one single moment because, as I've explained before, causality is fated. So every cause has an effect that then knocks on to another effect. And that means that the entirety of time and space is happening at one single, or you could argue very, very powerfully that the entirety of time and space is happening at one single moment, because the entirety of causality is an entire connected system, not only in a linear fashion, but more in a kind of very, very web fashion that is one entire entity, one entire system beyond the idea of temporality. So, although in that specific multiverse, I might be living out my life in a different kind of time stream to the multiverse, to this universe that I'm living in, and that those two things weren't arising at the same time in temporality, they would arise at the exact same time in kind of non-dual terms of that image arising not because of that basketball player's doing that because he was shooting a hoop in my imagination, not because of him doing that, or not because of my fantasy, but non-dual. At the exact same time they would arise. It wouldn't happen that they would arise separately or anything like that. And so therefore, but imagine that all the different fantasies that we have, every single thought in our mind, every single decision to the most finite degree that we're not even conscious of, creates another version of ourselves. Can you imagine? That is infinite in scope. I mean, the guy in the video was saying that it's got to be a very, 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 very high number of multiverses, or it's got to be infinite in scope. I think it's probably got to be infinite in scope, because there's no limit to the dissection that we can be consciously aware of, or even with instruments. There's no way we can measure the level of dissection that the well, I mean, maybe physicists could measure it, but God, I don't think you'd measure it now. But there's you could go down and down and down and down and down, and then you could end up just getting this basically infinite number of universes, just dum. Because it's not just, oh well, this is an action, because that's a subjective distinction of an action. An action actually is so finite. Every single little tiny point of a hair just moving a tiny little fraction, that's an action. And then the electron would split off the other way and then create a multiverse that was the opposite of that, or whatever, you know? And so that's how we get. But then that action would causally create a different set of actions in another multiverse that then would create an entire set of new actions based on that, and then etc, and then it boom, and then it gets infinite in scope just by kind of like the law of probability or statistics, you could kind of say. So I was thinking about this, and it really got me thinking, because I was like, oh my God, because this could mean that the entirety of the system is interrelated like this, and all of the archetypes work between universes. And I mean, we know that like things like gravity, like apparently bleed out of the universe, and possibly they go into some sort of higher dimensions, which we could speculate that the archetypes live in some sort of higher dimensions or exist in some sort of higher dimensions. But that gravity could bleed between universes and things like that. That's a possibility, at least. And so there's this incredible rich story that's being presented in front of my eyes, that I can start to see little things coming into place and start to understand between this entire super brain system of the multiverse. It's likely infinite, where all of these different imagistic ideas coming from between all of these universes linking up and then producing change in the individual to integrate the individual in a psychological setting at the very finite, small macrocosm level that isn't an integration solely based on the causal connectivity of the entire planet or even our entire universe and the imagistic realm and the mental realm that is causally and inextricably bound to the physiological realm and the things that we do physiologically, and then arise mental things, and then mental things affect physiological things, but also that is inextricably interlinked with things going on in other multiverses, which then all integrate one another. Then you can go a step further and you can say, well, hang on, this must be happening in some sort of universal level, where there's different universes that have I mean, we have to call upon psychologisms here, and then you just get into, far-fetched ideas. But imagine that a universe was a specific kind of subjective arrangement of phenomena, and you could say that universe has an individuality in an objective manner, in a sense of, well, these planets in a certain arrangement, etc. And that's one individuality because it's a different arrangement. It's an individual arrangement of certain planets, stars, etc. And so then you have all of these multiverses that are kind of integrating and interplaying with the things that are going on within all the other universes. Like there's kind of very, very subtle ties that kind of beyond temporality in a non-dual fashion kind of work with each other. It's all one process. It's very, very hard to describe. It's all one process beyond the realm of temporality, but yet it is integrating one another in the realm of temporality. Very, very, very strange. You could also say that, for example, when an individual dies, like myself, I die, my body passes on, right? And my body goes back into the environment, the causal connectivity of the environment. And my body then goes to create other things in the environment. And let's say at some point over the decomposition of my body and the breaking up of it up into all of ecology, and then it may go to create at some point down the line, many years, it would go to create a part of another human. And so physically that's what happens. I will become a part of another human in a sense. Now, if we relate that to the universe, let's just go one step back. So then let's say that particular human, there's a mental image of that human in the minds of other people, right? So that person becomes solely within the mental realm, shall we say, because everyone who knew that person or knew about that person has an imagistic representation of that person within their mind, within their personality. And that person comes as even after that person's dead, that imago of that person comes in the mind of that individual who's living and orients their behavior. For example, I was talking about this briefly last week. So, Jung, for example, his image comes in my mind and I start to act like Jung or like say things as if he would say them, and I'm not unconscious of that image for the most part because I'm very highly aware, but for a normal person would be unconscious of that image, right, of Jung in their psyche. But actually what's happening is when that image comes in, it directs my behavior, it influences me. Now we could say in a Christian setting, well, that's the spirit of the dead possessing an individual. Now that's a Christian interpretation, and it's not very scientific or anything, but I've given you the scientific explanation of the Christian idea of a possession by a spirit of the dead there, and that's what it does. It's an imagistic presentation of what you know of that particular person when of their personality coming into your mind, or pre-conscious, not your conscious mind, and directing and orienting your behavior based on kind of like a social reinforcement, shall we say, and kind of like an archetypal sort of representation in your psyche, like an individualized representation of an archetype by that specific individual who you're concerned with. And so that that individual kind of possesses your behavior, etc. Now imagine that if that was the case for universes. Now, so a universe dies, right, and its remains goes into the multiverse. It goes into another universe, right, and then and it creates and it kind of it disperses into the multiverse. So it disperses equally, like my body will disperse equally in the ground and get taken up by the entire ecology, let's say, or a good part of it, let's say. Our universe here and all the surrounding multiverses, when it dies through proton decay, right, when it dies, it'll get dispersed into the environment around it, which is other multiverses. And then that will then go to create kind of parts of other multiverses that are kind of springing up, that are new universes, like the Big Bang. How we had the Big Bang, and that, let's say, that's happening all over the multiverse. That will disperse into other universes and kind of go to help create those other universes in a sense. Now, that's not a very good theory, actually, because you could say, well, hang on a minute, if you're going to bring the Big Bang into this, surely it would have to be like this singularity, very, very high densely packed energy. And so if you're saying that there's this kind of whimpering factor by proton decay and it's dispersing into the environment, how the hell are you getting this Big Bang? But then again, how do we get the Big Bang of a child screaming from when, we know that child is actually a fundamental kind of now living organism that has actually come from all the things in the environment that have been dead in the past. So and yet when that child comes out of the womb, it comes out as a Big Bang screaming and oh my god, and that's a very, very small human individualized representation of the Big Bang itself. The Big Bang is a macrocosmic representation of that particular activity. And so, actually, in that sense, okay, maybe we can see something here. But imagine then that the kind of, how do I even describe this? The kind of imagistic representation, or the I don't even know how to describe it. It's so beyond conception. It's so crazy, man. But on the mental plane, that universe affects the other new universes just the same as those images of those people who are dead affect the living right now, as if they're possessed by the spirit. And that works on a level that's inconceivable to our understanding, because it's happening on such a finite degree over all these multiverses, all kind of just happening in finite manners, all the rest of it. Now, the way this argument falls down to a degree with the idea of the mental plane is, well, what do we mean by the mental plane of a universe? That doesn't exist, does it? So how can we say, well, that kind of has any sort of bearing? We can't really say that. So then we say, well, okay, maybe it doesn't work like that on the mental sphere with the universe, but there's still a very, very good argument that the physical side that I've just explained, that works. And so, yeah, you could argue that, but the other theory kind of falls down quite. What was I talking about? I was meant to talk about something else, wasn't I? But I bloody forgot. I forget. Adz, you should publish a Weird Dreams book. Yeah, well, maybe, I don't know. it maybe, I'm not sure. As long as I don't have a sex dream with Freud in it, I'll be happy. Well, there we go. Yeah. I was meant to explain something, wasn't I? I was meant to explain. I forgot what I was meant to explain. Damn it! I forgot what I was meant to explain because I was on a roll. I don't know. I don't know, man. No. I forgot anyway. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go now anyway because I have I need to get off, chill for a bit, and then go to bed. I start going down a rabbit hole every time it gets in my head that our entire planet might just be one little atom in some sort of enormous being. Yeah, oh my god. One of your more abstract wrangles. Oh, indeed. God, yeah. I mean, oh, bloody hell, this is abstract. Trying to formulate these. I mean, this is metaphysical oh, that's gone off. Metaphysical speculation at the end of the day. You can't, it's too inconceivable to even think of. But god damn it, I will write it down. Because god damn it, you don't know in 200 years or 500 years what people might gain out of me, like thinking about it. And then let's say someone comes along in 500 years, reads one of my books. I mean, I've never thought about it like that. So the problem we have with this sort of thinking and with this sort of metaphysical speculation is the scientific rigorousness of it. You can't make a rigorous judgment on it, or you can't make an experiment on it that means yes, we know. Really, it's very hard. You'd have to have some sort of brilliant technology that we're way not able to comprehend at the moment. Yeah, okay, we can understand particles and things like that, and we can dissect particles and all the rest of it, but to be able to get to this level of multiverse and the connections between all these things and whether these things exist and how these things process and the nature of different things and how they interconnect with one another, yes, it's hard, it's not possible on a scientific basis, you can't do it on a scientific basis. Anyway, Antoinette's just joined, and I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Erdei? I know you've been in the chat a couple of times before. What's Adz rambling on? Film you. Oh my god! Don't look back. Don't look back at this bloody chat. It's so mental. We have gone to realms beyond the possibility. There's no we can't you can't go to the realms that we've been to today. It's not possible. I can't go to the realms we've been to today. I am not good enough for the ideas that seem to pop into my mind randomly. I can't comprehend them, and yet I speak them. I know that sounds really bizarre and conflicting, but I can't comprehend certain things that I think of, which is it's really weird. I know, right? It's pretty mental. Oh, air day, I'm high. Air day? I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna go now. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one, which will be next week. Yeah, and God. Bloody hell, Jesus, man. Jesus, oh God. Okay, sorry, that is mental what we've just done there. Jesus, that is mental. That's mental even for me. This isn't, I would say that, I don't even know. It's just beyond even my mental. So yeah, I'll leave it there, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. So yeah, I'll see you next week. Diddly-did-did-did.